good that you even have records.
Yeah, it's a good thing. So
we're studying, then if anybody wants to come in and see what we discussed, we could do that too.
Well, yeah, that's what I do with this. I record it so that people who aren't here, like all the other people who probably will be joining us, can go back and see what they missed. Anyway, so I want to welcome you to Musar topic number 2, which is generosity, nidivut. And here's our agenda. So I always start out with talking about the teen Facebook group because I love it when people share. I just say that, and I also want to thank you guys who helped me for answering my grand questions, sending me photos for the gala video. And if you guys have any photos or anything that you can share with me, that would be great. Also, I want to tell you that Mark Zimmerman shared a really great link yesterday. Mm-hmm. It's a really powerful way. I know, Sharon, you already did Nidivut, but Rachel, if you didn't, it's like amazing. It's a video, and it shows how generosity plays into our lives. You should watch it. And actually, you could even, Sharon, if you want to share it with your group next time, it's just a great video. It's an interesting thing to see. And now we can look at our themes. This was a really interesting topic. One of the one I want to say is that also when I was doing a workshop and I was showing this curriculum to a bunch of educators at, I don't remember what conference, but they asked if I was going to be sharing like some information about the sources, the texts, because there's not much of that in the actual booklet. So I'm going to do this. So if I'm telling you something you already know, like, I'm sorry, but I'm going to just do it because, some people are interested, and I'm looking forward to hearing your insights, what you did, what you're planning to do, and make the materials come to life. I also want to say this. So what we did was we had every midah tie up to one of the Chai Mitzvah standard topics. Mm-hmm. So this one corresponds to the October topic of tzedakah. So we're going to kind of compare tzedakah and generosity because they are actually different. So here are the themes. So unlike tzedakah, which is a Jewish obligation based on justice, generosity comes from an open and willing heart to going beyond the minimum that justice might require financially or emotionally. And also generosity can be expressed in many ways. I think tzedakah also can be expressed in many ways. It's not necessarily giving money or things, but that's something that you might want to also talk about when you're talking about this. And of course, any questions or comments, just jump right in. I see that somebody else joined. I'm going to go back here and let him in. Hold on. Here we go. Because I'm excited to also hear what everyone has to say. I am going to, where'd he go? All right, he disappeared. All right. Oh, no, there he is. Okay, I'm going to unmute you. Okay, great. So again, if you have anything you want to jump in anytime, I'm really happy to hear. Okay, so let's go to the 3 kinds of generosity. Okay. So first, a quick word about the source. And Harley, I want to apologize also if I'm telling you something you already know, but people had asked to talk about the sources as well. So this is from Orchot Tzadikim. It's a book of Jewish ethical teachings that was composed in Germany during the Middle Ages and was originally named Sefer Hamidot, but the author is anonymous as far as I know. Orchot Tzadikim includes teachings from Rambam and others, and the work advocates improving one's character and exercising balance in one's life. So that's where this comes from. I have someone else I can bring in. Hi, Jessica. I'm just promoting everybody to a panelist so that if you have anything to say, you can just jump right in. I'm going to unmute you. I'm going to welcome you as well.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Jessica from Syracuse.
Thank you for joining us. And so I was just talking about the comparing tzedakah and generosity. We're talking about how there are 3 kinds of generosity. Okay, there are 3 kinds of generosity. Generosity with money, generosity with one's deeds, and generosity with one's wisdom. And all 3 are found in Abraham. So first, let's talk about the different kinds of generosity, and then we can talk about Abraham. So this text reminds us that there are many ways to be generous, and then it elicits a few thoughts for me, and jump in if you want to. What do you think is meant by being generous with one's deeds and with one's wisdom? Anybody want? Yes. Okay, I'll jump in. With one's wisdom, giving advice when actually it's going to be listened to. We have a whole thing on tochecha in our normal Chai Mitzvah, our standard subjects, which I'm sure, Sharon, you know about because you've done it. So, but I think sharing your advice is one way of sharing your wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Nina, I think Jessica had something to say, but she looks muted.
Oh, are you muted? I thought I unmuted you. Oh yeah, you are muted. I'm sorry.
No, there's a lot of background noise, so I'm just trying not to have it interrupt everybody.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say something.
Oh, no.
Okay.
If you want to unmute yourself, you know how to do it, so that's fine. That's good. Okay, we can also talk a little bit about generosity with one's deeds. There are a lot of different ways to do that, and actually we have a worksheet to focus the kids on it, but I'd love to hear if anybody has anything they want to add about that.
Well, it was interesting that I asked my kids, because I did this yesterday, almost all of them, because they're, in high school or junior high school and high school, didn't think that, their weakest point was the financial one, because they don't have that much money. But I was also surprised when they all said, their weakest point was giving their wisdom, because they didn't think they had anything to offer, because they're young, especially for, when they're dealing with parents and teachers. I said, I personally learn a lot from younger people. Don't sell yourself so short. You guys know a lot of stuff, technology, things. I mean, I'm always getting help by people. So they were like, oh yeah, maybe, you're right. We can help, other people with teaching others. So even though they just keep looking at it in terms of teaching younger people, but they need to look at that they could teach older people too.
They have to understand that everybody has something to teach you. It doesn't matter who that person is. It's regardless of age, race, creed, color, sexual orientation. It doesn't matter. Every single human soul was put on this earth to teach you something you don't know. Are you paying attention?
Exactly. So and that's another thing to bring into it, which is great. Are you paying attention? Because sometimes things are given to you very clearly, and sometimes you have to pay a little extra attention and kind of figure out what is being said to you and who is saying it. And it can come from a source that you did not expect it to come from. Mm-hmm. That's a really good point, and that's a nice thing to add to this discussion. And as you know, Sharon, you did this yesterday. I don't know if you broke your class up into groups, but that's one of the suggested things is to, have the kids say, the reason I think it's easier for me to be generous with such and such is because of so and so. Like, I'm not generous with money because I don't have any. It's harder for me to be generous with such and such because blah, blah, blah. So maybe it's easier for me to be generous with deeds because I have time, harder for me to be generous with wisdom because I don't have any. But, and then you can break them up into groups as to those who are generous with wisdom, those who are generous with deeds, and those who are generous with what they have. You don't have to have a lot to be generous with it. It's more like a percentage of what you have, and how you feel about it.
I was also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jessica.
I was going to say, I also did this activity. I did this session with my kids last week, and we started off by talking about things that they're really passionate about and what inspires them to be generous and to get into that headspace. And I was really pleasantly surprised by what, 11 to 14-year-olds had to say about, things that really drive them to give their time and their energy, and in some cases, like talk less money. It was really, I think it just helped them get into that space of really thinking about, this isn't just, like helping a little old lady cross the street, which is something that I think that they were originally kind of putting that into their perspective, and then going into things that they're actually passionate about, I think really helped drive the conversation in a different direction.
That's interesting. What kinds of things are they passionate about?
So one of the students was shared like something really deeply personal about a cousin that they had lost to a type of childhood cancer. And so that was, I think, set the tone for everyone taking it really seriously. So he does fundraisers and works with his family to raise money and to raise awareness for this type of cancer. And then the other students kind of started thinking about things that they're passionate about. I had one student that shared that they make these little bags for the homeless. So we're lucky that our students are really passionate about helping people, so they had things to share. But I think initially creating that space to be able to share something so deeply personal was really important.
That's really, really nice. That's
Yeah.
great to hear.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say that money isn't necessarily money, that kids can think bigger than that it's really resources. When you share your toys, when you sit there and you don't play by yourself on your game, but you go, let's get to a bigger console so we can all play together. When you create community by sharing your resources, that's generosity. It's not just giving your time and talent or your wisdom or your deep thought. It's actually, hey, I have a resource. I'm using it by myself, but I could share it and we can be happy together.
Did you talk about leveraging the money, going out and raising money from other people, and how much your generosity with money isn't just your own money?
That's right. That's a good point. Harley, you're going in and out, but you're right. Raising money is another way of sharing, which is and that's also giving your time, because you're giving your time to raise the money. So that's another thing. I see that there's another person here I'm going to just let in and talk, because I don't want to. If I can get my cursor in the right place. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Okay, because we can do this. Here we go. Hi, welcome, Elisheva. I see that you are on, and I want to give you a chance. If you want to, anytime you want to say anything, just jump right in, and we'll keep going here. I think I was going to say, we were talking about, hi.
You're off to a slow start, so I'm listening and multitasking, and grateful for being able to hear your wisdom as I'm getting myself set up for the day.
That's great.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, something Harley said or something Jessica said made me think of another kind of generosity. No, it might have been something Rachel said. Anyway, we're talking about being generous with building community. And I'm thinking also at this age, I think some teenagers are not so generous with attention. Like, and able to share your attention with siblings or with friends. Being able to share credit for an interesting thought, or being able to share the limelight, I think that's something that's also a form of generosity that we might not think about all the time if we're thinking in terms of tzedakah and not in terms of just generosity. That's something
I'll just say what has been on my mind for this week, and it's just tragic. We don't live far from the Northern California fires.
Oh, wow.
And we've, had these air quality alerts, and I thought our sukkah was on fire last Sunday because the smell was so intense here. And, I'm walking around my house just thinking like, oh my gosh, we have so much, and just imagining these people who lost everything. And so I think that for our extended community right now, it's this really incredible time to assess what we have and just to say like, do I need 10 shirts? Do I need 50 shirts? It is really an opportunity for this community to give and to, it's the flip side of the coin around generosity. Do we have enough?
And as we go through this, we'll see that every midah is a continuum. So you can be generous, you can be stingy, but you really want to be in the middle. You don't want to give away things that you don't really have to give either. You want to, be right in the middle there.
Yeah.
So here's a nice supplement page, and in the smaller groups, and I don't know whether you did this, but you can tell me if you did, if it worked. It's like cards you can cut out, and you can sort your thoughts and discuss in which category of generosity you think each of these things belong.
Nice.
Right? So it's nice, and then you can come back together as a class and discuss. It is like you were saying, it's like helping a little old lady across the street. It's also forgiving someone who's wronged you, sharing a recipe, giving advice. So it's a nice, it's just like a visual to help you organize for students that are younger or that could use that kind of sorting. I don't know if any of you used it or not, you could jump in and let me know.
Well, we didn't cut them out, but we used it as a jumping off going through it to say which category we put in each one to go over that. So that's how we did it. I didn't have a really huge group, so we couldn't really, I wanted to do that other group where we match people together, but there wasn't enough people that had different things to match them up with.
Right.
So that's why we just went on that.
That's nice. It's just if you can see the different kinds of generosity, that's kind of what it's about, you know. And so, you know, there's a question, Musar is a very hopeful Jewish spiritual practice, and that it believes we can cultivate these character traits. And it's nice to ask the kids, what's one practice you could commit to that would help you cultivate generosity in a new or a deeper way? And it's probably, I don't know how Tikkun Olam plays into your groups. This is a good time to start thinking about a class Tikkun Olam project if you don't already have one. There's a link to Volunteer Match in the links to social action later in this booklet. You probably have stuff going on in your communities that you want to be part of. But if you want also, it shows you social action in your geographic location, like wherever you are. So that could be helpful as well. And that reminds me, I wanted to ask you, so we're planning a Chai mitzvah day where we'll all share virtually. We'll all groups will do something and then they'll put it on Instagram. We'll have one hashtag. So just from you people that are here, I'm going to send out a doodle poll, but when is a good time for this to happen? Like, should we do it in like the December area, or should we do it in the spring, or should we do more than one? Off the top of your head, what do you think is good?
Most our mitzvah days are in the spring.
Yeah, our mitzvah.
Yeah, for the synagogues and for the Federation community.
Yeah, so you want to just kind of tie it into those, and we'll just put it on Instagram that way? That's kind of my first idea, but then I thought I'd just throw it out since we're talking about it here. If anybody else has something that they want to say.
I was also going to say spring, but in particular, this thought just popped into my head about Shavuot and like the opportunity during counting the Omer. Like if we didn't all do it on one day, but we all collaborated, like there are 49 days. Might we like up our mitzvah celebrations for 7 weeks?
That's nice. Yeah, we did Chai Mitzvah 2 years ago. I think we did March to Sinai, and every day we posted something. We didn't have teen groups yet, but we posted something that adult groups were doing.
Nice.
Yeah, until we had 49 of them. So that would be a great thing to add. Maybe we'll have our mitzvah day with the hashtag, and then we'll also each day of the Omer, maybe on our Facebook or somewhere, we'll also do that, because I really like that idea. That's a really nice thing.
Nina, it might be less ambitious if we decided to do the 7 weeks of the Omer rather than each day. Like if we had a Chesed and a Gevurah, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know for me if in the first year I could bring it together to kind of explore all of those qualities. But if I was able to align a particular tzedakah with a particular sphira, that would be amazing. You know, that would be great. Like, okay, we're going to do the chesed, or, you know.
Right. Well, we're talking about generosity now, and there's all kinds of things, as we know. There's money, deeds, and wisdom. So this is something to kind of let's sit there on the back burner, and by the time we get to our mitzvah day, we'll probably be more focused. And I like the 7 is easy. 1 per week is going to be easy. So, so that's good. That's something I'm looking forward to doing. That's a great idea. Okay, so, okay. So we'll go to the next text. And that is A Willing Heart. So before we go on, I almost forgot. We discussed 3 ways to be generous, but we haven't discussed the reference to Abraham in the other text. So let's go back for a second. So a midrash that you might want to share with your students says, Tzedakah was slumbering and Abraham aroused it. How did he do it? He built an inn with openings in every direction, and he would receive wayfarers. So what this means is the explanation is that Abraham excelled in all the three categories that we discussed. He used his wealth to accommodate travelers. He risked his own physical safety to rescue Lot, who had been kidnapped. And with his wisdom, he brought the word of God to the world that was pagan at the time. He shared his monotheistic vision. So that's three. That's what we discussed. The fourth entrance to the inn, because we need one in each direction. He gave to others every important way. And the fourth dimension was when he did all these three things, he became he had the trait of giving. You can perform all these tasks, but that doesn't mean that you are an actually generous person. So he imbued himself with the trait of giving by doing all of these things. And that's the fourth dimension. He knows what it means to be generous. I read a myth somewhere where if you go to sleep thinking of ways to be generous, that somehow brings you to this fourth dimension, like you're becoming a generous person. But doing all these things is how you become a generous person and how you exemplify it and become an example to others. And that's the fourth dimension of the giving. So that's the Abraham part. And of course, if there are questions or comments, just jump in anytime. Now we can go on to a willing heart. The next text. The Eternal spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel that they take from me an offering. From every person whose heart makes him willing, you are to take my offering." So you see, it says Yidbenu, and that is from the root Nun Dalet Vet. You are to take my offering. So he didn't want his offerings from people who were just doing it. He wanted from people who were really willing to give. When the story continues into Exodus 36, it turns out that the Israelites donate so much that Moses has to tell them to stop donating. And we've seen stuff like this happen, generous responses, when catastrophes happen, like the tsunami or the earthquakes, the famine, or the current hurricanes. And as you were talking about those fires in Northern California, people really do step up. So it's interesting to talk to the students. What have they ever been moved to give in excess? And what moves people to give? So I don't know if anybody of you who have done it already spoke with your students, or if you have anything you want to add in here, or any opinions. It's interesting. I was thinking, because I worked so much for nonprofits all my life, how certain things are used to get people to give, not the overly generous, the regular ones, like recognition, right? Mm-hmm. Power in a certain way. And so one of the things I want to say about that is it's not bad. It's fine. It's better to give than not give. So it's not bad, but we're right now talking about generosity, not just giving, and that's the difference. So the Torah text teaches that the donations to the creation of the tabernacle were not mandatory. It had to be created only from the donations of willing hearts, not hardened or begrudging hearts. And purity of motive is what this means. And so the students can reflect and think when they've acted out of purity of motive. Because if you look at yourself very honestly, I think everyone will find that sometimes you're acting out of purity of motive, and sometimes you're acting out of motives that are like less than the highest, but that's not always bad. That's something. And what we can think about, if anybody here did the standard Chai Mitzvah teen program last year, and others, because it's something that's taught a lot, Rambam's ladder. We're taught that it's a higher form of tzedakah to give willingly, and you can use this supplement if you want. I can send it out with the follow-up email. You can point out that the ladder refers to laws about tzedakah, but nedivut is different in the ways that we've talked about. But this is something that also reflects on generosity. And our tradition recognizes that there are ulterior motives for giving. Therefore, the highest honor is reserved for those who serve on a Chevra Kadisha, which is a holy society, which, as you know, are people who care for the body of someone before they're buried. And the reason this is considered the highest is you can't have an ulterior motive because the dead person can't thank you. So, but again, as I said before, giving is giving, and it's better than not giving. But it's interesting to look at this continuum. And then something else I want to say about a willing heart. So the Eternal spoke to Moses saying, speak to the children of Israel that they may take for me an offering. Okay. So, oh, I didn't do it there. Okay. So vayikhu, take, right? And you see that they're giving, right? They're not taking. Why does it say taking? Yikhuli. And Rabbi David of Kotsk, who was the Kotzker Rebbe, he lived in 1787 to 1859. He was a Hasidic rabbi in the Ukraine. He said, oops, let me find what he said. A folk saying states that a fool gives and a wise person takes. This refers to a person who gives tzedakah. A fool who gives tzedakah thinks that he's giving, while a wise person who gives tzedakah realizes that he or she is taking. They're the one who benefits most by the action. So another nice thing to discuss when you see Vayikhuli, you can say, when was your own act of giving to another actually been a gift to yourself, when you've received more than you've given? I think that is something that I've experienced a lot of times. Just sometimes when you give and you see how it affects someone, it really gives to you as well. So that's something that is good. And again, any questions or comments, just jump right in.
You generally don't see as much from giving money, I think, as you do from giving time. I mean, I know that when I volunteer at the convalescent home, I feel like I'm blessed that I had the opportunity to help them, as opposed to, you know, they love the camaraderie and having people come in. But I really feel like I got the better part of that interaction, that I got more out of it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Yes, Harley, you were going to say.
One of the problems of, I love the fact that it feels great to do all these things for other people. One of the flip questions, though, is, does that mean that we're just simply doing it because we're selfish?
That's like a whole catch-22. What a great discussion.
Always in the dilemma of doing else and yet figuring out a way to be modest about it and doing it that is genuine. We got to get to the point where we're doing it while we're getting a lot out of it. We're not doing it for what we get out of it, and that's a tough thing to teach at any age.
Yes, and that's such an important thing to talk about when we're having this whole discussion, because that's like another dimension to it. And I'm really glad you pointed that out. That's really, really good. I see one more person here. I want to give them, okay, that's good. Okay. So I just wanted to point that part out about this as well, because it can bring up such interesting things. Okay, this is really an interesting thing coming up. Don't be stingy, which is, again, okay? So we've talked about being generous, being so generous that you're taking. Now, don't be stingy. This is from Cheshbon HaNefesh, which means a reckoning of the soul. It was written about 200 years ago by Rabbi Mendel Menachem Levin of Satanov, which is in the Ukraine. And he offers a step-by-step approach to character development and refinement. What he says is, accustom yourself to finding satisfaction in acting kindly towards others, and in seeing the meanness of being stingy. I wonder if anybody recognizes what illustration I put behind this. You recognize?
I used this. I read the book at the end, even though I know some of my kids. I assumed a lot of them already heard of the book, but I was surprised that some of them never heard of the book. But I wanted them to look at the book in a different way, and to discuss how they felt about the tree and giving too much, because I like the concept. I started off the program with midah or midot being a measure, that there's always a balance. We're not trying to say that you always have to be one side generous. There's an other side to it. Sometimes you have to withhold. You can't always give all of yourself. It's too much. So we had that discussion, and that's what we did. They thought it was, and they didn't necessarily look at that. They always looked at the tree, and they didn't really look at, how the tree was really. It was kind of a sad story that when we all went through it together.
Yeah.
So that was good. So.
Yeah, I want to say, for those of you who don't know this book, The Giving Tree, you probably all know it by Shel Silverstein. It really illustrates another side to not being stingy. So this text reminds us that we want to grow our capacity for generosity, accustom yourselves reminds us that practice makes perfect. And then we're going to do some practices later to help us cultivate the midah of generosity. But it's important to acknowledge that we're all stingy at times, whether with our time, our money, our emotions. Sometimes doing so is actually important self-preservation. That's what this is about. So, and as Sharon said, a midah is a measure, and each of us has a different makeup. Some are more generous, some are more stingy, some are more or less patient. And so, as we said, we have to find the right continuum. And so that's why this is a great book to have here. And I'm going to go to the practices because they're interesting. And you can look at them as you do want to cultivate generosity, but you also want to cultivate the right amount of generosity. So there's a generosity journal. Commit to doing at least 3 generous acts each day. Write about the 3 generous acts you accomplished in your generosity journal. And also write about one situation each day where you weren't as generous as you might have been. Next, try to improve on that behavior. If you like, you can share what you've written with the next class. So it depends on how often you meet, how much time you have, if this makes sense when you come back. If you do, it would be a nice thing. I tutor a little girl, a bat mitzvah girl, and she has these cards. I don't know where she got them, but she gave one to me and I had to give it to someone else. You kind of hide them, and then when you find them, you do a generous act and pay it forward. Kind of an interesting thing. I actually put it on somebody's windshield yesterday because I don't know what to do with it. It's my sweatshirt pocket. But it's an interesting thing to see how the different forms generosity can take. That's something you might be interested in. And let's look at the other practices.
Nina, can you recommend a good Jewish text on Pay It Forward?
What did you say?
Can you recommend a good Jewish text on Pay It Forward? Maybe somebody else can.
You know, that is something I want to read.
Mitzvah, 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 from, Pirkei Avot is a good text. One mitzvah generates another mitzvah. So I would say that that's a pay it forward kind of thing.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah. That's good. I'm actually writing this down because I'm going to put it in our follow-up. It's from Pirkei Avot. So I'll find where in Pirkei Avot it is, unless you know off the top of your head.
Look it up quickly.
Thank you.
I get my little texts here.
That's awesome. That is really awesome. That's why I love these webinars. I've got such great fun. Thank you. That's good. And Pay It Forward is something that if you have a group that meets more than once a month and you want to, supplement some things in, that might be a very interesting, although in some ways depressing movie to view.
And sorry, I had to step away for a second, but what about Honi the Circle Maker?
Good thought. Okay, yeah, that's another good one. Okay, I'm going to put that in our follow-up letter too. Okay. Do you want to elaborate why it would be a good text?
For paying it forward, because the essence of it is there's an old man planting a seed and a young person comments, "Why are you doing that, old man? Certainly you won't live to see its fruit." And he said, "Well, my grandparents planted those trees there for me and I'm eating the fruit now."
Exactly. And that's interesting. I always use that when I'm doing like family stuff, but it's nice. It's very nice.
The text is Pirkei Avot chapter 4, verse 2. 4:2.
Thank you. That's great. You just saved me some time. Thanks. That's great. I'm going to put that in our follow-up because other people who are doing this are going to find that interesting. I like the whole Pay It Forward idea with text. It's a really nice thing to add as well. Also, don't forget that link on the Facebook page because that's really interesting also.
This is not a Jewish wisdom, but my son has this song disc of funny things, and one is this joke where one man sees another one and his house is it's raining and the house is leaking, and he says, "Well, why don't you fix your roof, man? You got all these leaks." And he said, "I know, but it's raining outside and I can't do it. And when the sun is shining, my roof doesn't leak." So it's not exactly that, but it's
yeah,
it's similar, taking care of things now.
Yeah, you know what else it relates to? We're talking about people giving so much when there's a disaster, but when there's not a disaster, people may not think about that there are still people who need things. It's fine to be reminded when you see a tsunami or a hurricane or a fire, but what about like normal times. And actually that link is so interesting. It's about where the kids are. It's wonderful. It's like some people are just born in a better position. This coach says to these kids who are going to run, okay, you're all in one place. If both your parents are married, take a step forward. If you don't have to pay for your college education, take a step forward. And it goes through all these things. And he says, okay, now look, you all have to run the race, but some of you are starting in a different spot. It's just very interesting.
You know, the Roche Kodesh, it's a girl thing curriculum also in about the 3rd or 4th year has a game. It's kind of a chutes and ladders game that's very similar. And it will be like, you got pregnant at 17. You know, I mean, it's definitely for teens, and it's, you know, or you dropped out of high school, or you got your high school degree. You know, you were able to rent an apartment, but it's sort of a look at poverty and climbing a ladder, literally.
Yeah. So that's something interesting to add as well. And that relates well to what we're about to talk about, which are the other practices. So one of them is when you're volunteering, sometimes it can be drudge work or it can be an obligation.
Can I interrupt for a second? I'm so sorry. So I actually have to hop off the call because I have to head to. I was wondering if this is being recorded. Is it going to be sent out?
Yeah. I sent out a link to it.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you all so much.
Thanks for joining.
Okay, take care.
Me too. Okay, so for those of us who are still here, volunteering can be drudge work or it can be an obligation, but this is an encouragement to plan volunteering time with an open heart and purity of motive. So there are some social action links, as I said, and I'm sure there are things that are going on in your synagogues. This one I really like, Shabbat sharing. It's traditional to give tzedakah before Friday night candle lighting. It's also a good time to be generous with what you share with your family. Tell them what you appreciate about them during the past week. Tell them something you've learned during the past week. Just share, because people are so running around so much. They don't always have time to share stuff like that. And it's a good habit to get into also. And then this is one I really like too, Midah meditation. So sometimes an image in your head or a body stance can help you to cultivate a Midah. So visualize open hands, held up and out in act of generosity. Or I like it to actually do it. But because we're talking about the continuum, I like the idea of you're giving, but you're also kind of taking, and like find what feels right to you. And that's something you can do. And practice it with your group, and then do it like for a week yourself and see if it makes you think about generosity at times you might not have thought about it otherwise. And again, if anybody has anything else that they want to throw in here, I'll go to the supplemental materials. Okay, so, additional information, the giving tree, which we spoke about. And then there's a Jewish fable that claims that the location of the temple in Jerusalem was chosen because of an act of great generosity between two brothers that took place there. And this is a link to the story. Probably a lot of you remember the story, but just in case, I'm going to read it because I really like it. And this is the version that you'll get if you click on this link. 4,000 years ago, two brothers lived near each other on a hill by Jerusalem. They each had their own farm, but they shared a threshing floor. Each year, they would bring in the harvest and divide it equally between them. Then they would take the grain to their farms and sell it in the marketplace. One of the brothers was wealthy but had no family. The other had a family but was poor. One night after the harvest had been divided into equal measures and taken to each brother's home, the wealthy brother lay awake in bed thinking, I need just enough grain to pay for my food and servants. But my poor brother, he has so many mouths to feed, he needs the money more than I do. He rose up out of bed and went down to his granary. He lifted up as many sacks as he could carry and started to walk towards his brother's farm. Just around that time, the other brother was lying in bed unable to sleep. I have a wife and children who will take care of me and the farm if anything happens to me. But my poor brother, if something happens to him, he will have to pay to be cared for. He needs the money more than I do. Quietly, so as not to disturb his wife and children, he rose up out of his bed and tiptoed down to his granary. He lifted up as many sacks as he could carry and walked towards his brother's farm. The two brothers met midway between their farms, their arms laden with the sacks of grain they were carrying to each other. The full moon shone down upon them as they dropped their bundles and ran to embrace each other. And God looked down and smiled. This, he said, is where I shall build my temple. Okay, so that's the story. It's a nice one to share. And I'm open to any questions or comments because that pretty much concludes going over our material for next time. Okay.
The only thing one comment I want to or a question I have to ask just in general, because I know we're supposed to be encouraging our students to take on a ritual. So what kind of things are everybody suggesting to their students who are at this age? I'm trying to get them in the habit of doing something different that they haven't, done before, or, what are some ideas for that? And I want them to be able to come in the next time and, did they experiment with it? Did they like it? I want, but I'm just wondering what other people are doing for that.
That's a great question. Does anybody have something they want to share? I can give some suggestions.
I like the Shabbat practice of giving tzedakah. That I think I mentioned that to them. That's one thing that you could do. But just in general, what you would suggest to get that going.
So if you're talking about Shabbat, if you look at your students, I don't know, I mean, every place is different, but I think most of our students, I doubt any of them light candles in their houses, or very few. They could just try that once a month. I had a 4th grade, I taught them how parents bless their children. Mm-hmm. And they were, this whole 4th grade class lined up. They wanted to be blessed. They didn't want 2 at a time, and there were a lot of kids. I had to do 1 at a time, and they stood quietly and waited for each kid to be blessed, and I sent it home to their parents because the kids clearly loved it. Right. So you can look at different things that seem maybe commonplace, but maybe they're not going on, and maybe just a little thing, It doesn't have to be a big, like you have to go to synagogue every Saturday morning for 3 hours. It can be a small something. And it can relate pretty, like it's nice. We're relating to giving tzedakah, to generosity, but we can also relate just to Shabbat in general, just to maybe try lighting candles. And I'm glad that you asked that also. I'm going to put that question in our follow-up. And I'm also going to try and find things that I can suggest, because I think that's something that would probably be helpful.
Right. And one of the things I suggested, sometimes is even just, saying a blessing. They could even just wake up and say Modeh Madani Fanecha, and just be thankful, or even saying, the bedtime Shema too, just to get in the habit, see how they like it. All of them, these are all my post B'nai Mitzvah students. I know they all wear a talit. For my adults, I say you might want to experiment with that, or, little things of that sort. But I was just trying to, and sometimes the students are dependent on their parents to do a lot of things, so they don't always get the chance to do some of the stuff, like going places or lighting whatever it is, so they could try it.
Yeah. When we talk about, we have a lot of practices. We have like meditation that we encourage them to do. We could put a prayer in there. Just saying a prayer is something that people, I don't know if they do or not. My Chai Mitzvah group, my adults, we decided to just pray every day for a month. Some people might have anyway, but it was an interesting thing. People started sending back and forth emails with different kinds of prayers that they found that were interesting. So, I like that. I'm going to put that question out, and I'm going to give some suggestions from now on. And I like that you asked that. Thank you. Is there anything else we want to talk about before we are finished?
Can you hear me? It's Ellen.
Yes, hi.
Hi, how are you? I'm sorry I was late to come to the conference and haven't really said much, but I just wanted to know if there anybody else who is teaching 7th graders in this program, because I have some challenges that are happening right now.
7th graders.
And
you have some, don't you? Young?
I have 8th graders.
8th graders?
And I have a mixed group. I have 8th graders and 10th graders, but the 8th graders are kind of, mature. But yeah, I don't have 7th, but I have 8th, so I don't know.
Well, my 7th graders, and we have 19 of them in the class. It's a very big class. And this week we had some issues. The kids, we've been following the program. We haven't posted anything yet. We haven't gotten out and done any work in community. We've talked about a lot of things. And I thought, you know, the kids were really understanding and getting it. Well, from all of a sudden yesterday morning, one of the kids, and this is a group of kids who were kind of have a pack mentality. One of them said, they don't understand how this has anything to do with Judaism. And I was like dumbfounded by that. They didn't see the connection. And then one by one, each kid just kind of copied the other kid, except for one kid in the class who says, wait a minute, we're all studying for our bar bat mitzvahs, and we're going to have the bar bat mitzvah, but we're growing up and we need these characteristics, you know, in our life and all that. And the kids just looked at him like he was from Mars. And the kids were very upset. They said, we just want to learn stuff. We just want to learn Jewish history and how to fend off anti-Semitism. We just don't want to know anything about any of these things. We don't care about other people, you know, injustice and things like that. Like I was trying to talk to them about, you know, how what we do here affects people across the globe. And, you know, I have taught kids of that age before, and they've gotten it and made the connections. And this group, it was pretty unbelievable. And I talked to my director about it, and all they want to do for a volunteer activity is go to an animal shelter. We had this thing where we're going to do interviews with some of the people in a senior citizen center, a Jewish center. And they're like, oh, we don't want to be around old people because I feel uncomfortable. And they're the ringleaders in the group. They just kept talking, and then spread it around the room. And I know that's, you know, like a problem, that an in-house internal problem we have to take care of. But it was really sad to me that these kids didn't get the connections, except for one kid who seems to always get everything. And they were very young, and they might be too young for this program. So that's what I was curious about, if anybody had kids this age in their group. Thank you.
I don't know if it's age. It sounds more like entitlement.
Yeah.
And I think that those kids need this more than anybody.
Right.
Well, that's what my director said, you know, also. And so we have to kind of go about this in some other way, that kind of like almost like a hidden agenda, something, because they're not catching on to it. I even showed them that character development film, and they said, what makes this Jewish? What's so Jewish about this? I mean,
Wow.
They did not get what Judaism is. They think it's studying for your bar bat mitzvah and reading from the Torah. I mean, that is what they thought Judaism is. I mean, this is my first year with these kids, and I don't even know what they learned at this religious school. I was teaching in another religious school, and I know what we taught every year. And I know if I had seventh graders at the other school, which since closed, it wouldn't be like this. So it was just bizarre.
I think maybe you want to have a discussion about what do they think Judaism is. I
Yeah.
had that discussion with, and we wrote on the board, it was sixth graders. It was right before the holidays. What is Jewish about, you know, what do you see as being Jewish? And ask them, and write down make a list. And then have these other things say, why are these Jewish? And how are they Jewish? And, you know, we have Jewish texts we're bringing in. Judaism is relevant to their lives. And I don't think they've made that connection yet. And I think this is a really good opportunity to make that connection.
Yeah, we've read with the text, and we try to connect things. Even when I do like Parsha study with them, I bring it forward and try to connect it. But they're just like stuck, and they have this like thing where they're separating Judaism from everything else. It's so strange. I really have never encountered this before. So yeah, you're right. Kind of start back at the basics. What is being Jewish, and how are these other ideas Jewish?
This year we've actually speckled our Musar with action. Tonight this Wednesday we're supposed to be going to beautify the cemetery. We're going to we're actually going to clean the shul. We're going to go to at least 2 places to feed the homeless and the hungry. We're going to go and do leadership in action. We're going to have people from around our community who are community leaders who talk about their projects, come in and
Mhm.
and discuss their projects, and we
Mhm.
set the kids up with questionnaires of
Mhm.
what they're pulling out, and then they introduce their leaders to the rest of the community and say,
Mhm.
this is what we learned about them. There are so many things that we have scheduled. We're not even tapping into Musar until next week.
Oh, okay.
We've already done other stuff leading up to this with the High Holy Days, and now we're going to have them go and beautify the cemetery, and then we're going to jump into Musar. Why are we doing this? And the whole year is speckled, and they already know they're going out in the world, and they're going to take what they're learning here and apply it.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. I mean, I had tried to schedule some things going out, and I like these ideas. I even made connections with organizations and
Great.
homeless group, but the kids don't want to do it. They only want to go work with animals. But what are you doing for the beautification of the cemetery? What does that involve?
They're actually going to go and clean up any trash, make sure that
Yeah, I want the
the
kids to do something like
headstones
that.
are cleared, pick up the clear off. It's now fall, so clear off the leaves, make sure that there are rocks available, that the watering area is clear and clean, and maybe the bathrooms, or whatever it is
Mhm.
that they do for beautification, we're going to
Mhm.
go and do it. Because it's a night class, we're not going to be weeding or planting or doing anything that's fun.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it is, we're going to go beautify. And
That's a great idea.
yeah, before the High Holy Days, they usually have the kids come in, and one of
Yeah.
the schooling nights is actually cleaning the synagogue, setting up for High Holy Days, letting them help the staff
Wow.
make that happen, because they're going to be appreciating the service. So why aren't they part of developing it? Why aren't they
That's
part of
great.
the creation of making that place specific for High Holy Days?
Mhm. Mhm.
That is
Well,
great.
those are wonderful ideas. And
One other thought for Ellen. Ellen, you might want to consider finding some older kids or somebody around there that you think these seventh graders respect,
Mhm.
and
Smart. Yeah.
and talk
Yeah.
about what they think being Jewish means to them.
That's a great idea.
A
Mhm.
great idea.
We have like a group of Madahim, that have gone through the whole Hebrew school program. Not this program, because this is brand new to our school. So that's a great idea. Yeah.
Great.
Some of them have the older brothers and sisters.
Right.
If they respect them, yeah.
You have to find ones they respect. Exactly.
Right.
Ones that are cool and can answer questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And there may be college students around that can do that for you too. You just have to sort of find the kids that are willing to go along with you in your class, and ask them who do they think the other ones will listen to.
Yeah,
And
I think, yeah,
Yeah, it's a good idea.
it's incredible.
Smart. Very smart.
they will spin you in circles around anything you try to say.
Yep. Oh my gosh, yes.
Great suggestions. Great suggestions. I think
Yes.
it's going to work. I hope so.
Well, I may have to, just use part of the materials and sort of figure out some things, but we want to get the kids out there, and that's what we've been trying to do. It's just hard. I don't work very many hours for them, so it's hard to make phone calls and such. So the administrations, they said they'd help, and they'd try to line up places, for us to go and get parents, to drive. We'll see what happens.
Well, I think you need to engage other people, like some role models, and you have to let them start you have to meet them where they are. They're at as low as they can get. So
yeah, they are.
But you know what? You have to start somewhere, and this is where you kind of put it out there. They're asking you. They're not asking you specifically, clearly, but that's what they're really doing. They're asking you to show them how Judaism is relevant to their lives and what Judaism is besides studying for your bar mitzvah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I think
that's a good question. How is it relevant to their lives?
right. Maybe you can get them going. Hopefully.
I don't know, you've given me some ideas, and I thought maybe I'm the only person out there that's having this problem. I don't
It
know.
can be, it's a tough year, but I think you can do it. Hopefully, you got some great suggestions here. So when we get together next time, we'll find out what happened, and we will keep supporting you and figuring out ways to make
Oh,
this
I appreciate that. It's great. I mean, I love the program, and I, wish I had a group of people that were, would engage it more, because it's such a wonderful program. But
when you get these kids going, you're going to feel that much better than anybody else who had an easy time.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining. It was really great talking, and I will send a follow-up email with the text we talked about, and I'll ask some questions in our mitzvah day. And again, I'm so glad that we had this opportunity to talk, and thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Nina.
Thanks.